also introduced the common alkyl groups, including the common branched alkyl groups. So we have, for instance, the sec-butyl, ayan, the isobutyl, tert-butyl, the isopropyl. These are examples of branched alkyl groups. And I repeat knowing na they are removed with one hydrogen already as they are being obtained from alkanes, they are unstable. Parte lang po ito ng larger organic molecules. Okay? Now, at this juncture, we will begin discussing what are the different classes of functional groups rather. So somehow you have an idea already with the first class ng compound, the alkanes, because this was introduced already last meeting. So for this afternoon, i-discuss natin yung other common functional groups, okay, or other important families ng organic compounds. Now, before I proceed to this table, let me remind you first that later sa third column, particularly dito sa third column ng table na to, you will be observing in your PDF handouts, you can see it there, you observe the symbol R, capital R, class. So as early as now, please do realize na yung symbol R dyan, capital R, that is used to designate any alkyl groups. So yan yung tandaan nyo. That could be any alkyl groups. And we all know that yung alkyl groups, yung point of attachment is yung carbon atom. So I repeat, yung symbol capital R dyan later on, may encounter natin sa mga type formula or mga general formula ng mga functional group. Capital R stands for alkyl groups. And the specific atom or representation na atom which is directly attached to the functional group would be the carbon atom. Okay? Kasi it is the carbon atom, di ba? Kung saan nag-remove ng one hydrogen producing an alkyl group. So isang carbon dyan sa alkyl group is unstable. So yan yung magiging point of attachment. Sige. So let us now proceed to the common functional group. So sa table na to, your goal dapat is for you to master the identification of functional group. So you have to be familiar on the different functional groups, yung structural feature ng functional group. Okay? And with regards to the fourth column naman, you don't have to learn about it for this moment for this table for this part of our discussion kasi we have a separate discussion with regards to specifying examples of each functional group, the naming, the nomenclature of different functional groups. So matatackle natin yung mga structures per functional group including its naming. Okay, later on. So step by step yan. So yung focus nyo lang dito, class, is to master the identification ng functional group. Ano ba yung dapat yung malaman na structural feature for a certain class of compound. Alright, so let's start with the simplest family. So yung alkanes. Alkanes do have a functional group, carbon to carbon single bond. So you know this already, or carbon to hydrogen single bond. So either of that is the functional group of an alkane. Alright? Bakit pwede yung carbon to hydrogen bond? This is referring particularly to the simplest example of alkane, which is methane. Kasi if we recall, methane it only contains one carbon and it has 4 surrounding hydrogens. So as you can see, the molecule solely contains carbon to hydrogen single bond. Okay, so more than one carbon, more than one na nga carbon for an alkane, that is already represented by a functional group, carbon to carbon single bond. Okay, so for the general formula of alkane, it's R single bond H. So I have mentioned earlier na ang R dyan represents any alkyl group. So na-mention ko yan ha in the beginning of this table. Sabi ko yung letter R na symbol for this column, you always treat that as any alkyl group. So halimbawa, for an alkane, for this given example, let me give, for instance, an example of an alkyl group. Let's say the simplest alkyl group. Okay, para mabuo lang, mas specify natin yung halimbawa ng alkane. Kasi general formula lang to. General formula ng any alkane. It be branch alkane, branch chain alkane, state chain alkane. That would be the type formula. Okay? So halimbawa, yung R group is methyl. Methyl is CH3. No? So CH3, ito yung point of attachment. Now, if we try to add this hydrogen, okay, para mabuo yung stable formula for an alkane, then you can simply add here the hydrogen based on the general formula ng alkane. Okay, so yung binigay ko lang is halimbawa ng R group. Yung binigay ko na halimbawa is a methyl CH3, yung kulay pula dyan. Okay, itong kulay pula, di ba? This is methyl CH3. Okay, so as you can see, nabuo na yung stable, or specific na alkane, and that is methane. So halimbawa lang yan. Okay, so yan yung i-master nyo lang, functional group, general formula, and the name of that functional group or the class of compounds. Sige, next. After alkane, we have alkene. Now, with regards to alkene, please take note the structural feature or the functional group ng alkene is carbon to carbon double bond. Carbon to carbon double bond, alkene yan. Okay, so this portion here, yung mga connecting bonds dyan ng mga carbon, that could be any R group. Okay? So, halimbawa, so ito yung general formula. Halimbawa, so yung binigay dito, yung carbon na to, ito yan, meron siyang dalawang R group. So, pwede yan any R group. Okay, same thing with this carbon. So, yung point lang dito is si alkene, functional group niya is carbon to carbon double bond. So, if you are given a structure, and then you have observed this group of atom, carbon to carbon double bond, then that portion of the structure is an alkene. Okay? So this is the simplest example of alkene, wherein hindi R group yung binigay dito, which is this time, it's hydrogen. Pwede naman hydrogen. Depende yan kung may simplest form of that class of compounds. So just like methane, diba? Yung simplest example, simplest example of alkane is methane. So ganun din with alkene, it's ethene. But you can have this hydrogen replaced with R groups, any alkyl groups. So that is still alkene. Dito lang, nagbigay lang dito ng halimbawa. The simplest one yung binigay. And this is still alkene, knowing that the structure contains a carbon, double bond, carbon. Okay, hindi na. Ayan. So, carbon, double bond, carbon. Okay? Next. Let's have alkyne. So with regards to alkyne, the functional group naman is carbon, triple bond, carbon. Carbon to carbon, triple bond. Okay? So dito yung binigay na halimbawa is the simplest alkyne, ethine. Okay? So ito general formula lang po to, general formula. And I repeat for those who just joined the meeting, the class, yung R dito, capital R class, that simply designates any alkyl group. That could be any alkyl group. Okay? So let's say, for example, this is added with CH3. Okay, that is an example, no? Para ma-visualize ninyo. Halimbawa, yan ng specific alkyne compound. Okay? Dito lang yung binigay is the simplest alkyne. A simplest alkyne contains 2 carbon. Okay, triple bonded. So, ayan. Next, let's have Arin. Arin, it has this functional group. So, it is a ring structure with conjugated single double bond. Okay, it is a 6 carbon containing a ring. Then ay conjugated 5 bonds or conjugated na single bond, then double bond, single bond, double bond. Okay, now this AR dyan, capital A, then small letter R, this stands for aryl. Okay, yung aryl naman, that is an example of kumbaga para siyang alkyl group, only that ang alkyl group, yung source niya is an aromatic ring. So, ato lang na siyang matackle the moment we discussed all about aromatic ring. So, for now, just remember na yung AR dyan is an aryl group. It is an example of a cyclic ring removed with 1 hydrogen. Okay? So, somehow, igsuon lang na sila with alkyl groups. Okay? So, a specific example of an arene is benzene. So, as you can see there. Then, we also have haloalkane or the halide. Okay? Yung haloalkane, halide, based on the name itself, so may alkane. And we all know that alkane contains carbon to carbon single bond. So, may chain of single bond, carbon to carbon. Now, with regards to this portion ng pangalan, halo, this comes from the word halogen. So we would expect na you have an alkane chain, carbon to carbon single bond, okay, or a carbon single bond to hydrogen, and then there is a direct attachment with a halogen. Okay, so yan yung kumbaga feature, structural feature ng haloalkane. Okay, so as you can see here. Ito yung point of attachment. So ito, mga R group ito. And again, the R group is being represented by a carbon atom. Okay, the alkyl group, the R group dyan, represented by a carbon atom of an alkyl group. Carbon atom of an alkyl group. Yung mismong point of attachment ng alkyl group. Okay, so this would be the general formula. As you can see. So itong capital X dyan, that could be any halogen. So ito yun, it could be fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, then directly attached to any alkyl group. So halimbawa, the alkyl group here, okay, directly attached to a carbon is, what is a 2-carbon straight chain alkyl group? What do you think is that? CH3, CH2. A 2-carbon chain alkyl group, di ba? That is ethyl. Okay, so ethyl, kung attach na siya with a functional group, a halogen, then that will become already a stable compound, no, of haloalkane. And then we also have alcohol. So alcohol is also a common functional group. So yung functional group kapag alcohol, it's OH. So yan yung point of attachment, OH. So the general formula, lagyan mo lang yan ng any alkyl group. Okay, you attached any alkyl group that makes it, okay, a stable compound of alcohol already. Kaya nakalagay dito, di ba? Yung type formula niya or general formula is ROH. Nakuha? So, any alkyl group yan. So, halimbawa, dito, you have here the alkyl group, ethyl. Di ba? That is ethyl. CH3, CH2. Okay? So, it is being attached to an OH forming ethyl alcohol, no, or ethanol. Okay, do not worry, no, about the namings of these compounds, because again, we will have a separate discussion on the nomenclature of each functional group. Okay, so for now, just master the identification of the functional group. Ano yung dapat yung tandaan kapag alkane? Kapag carbon to carbon triple bond, that is alkyne. Kapag may alkane and then my attachment of a halogen, that is haloalkane or halide. Kapag may OH attached to a straight chain alkyl group or an open chain, straight chain or branch chain alkyl group, then that is alcohol. Alright? Next, ether. Kapag naman ether, you have an oxygen, no, then singly bonded to R groups. Okay? So, ayan. So, that is why yung type formula ng ether is ROR. So, this could be any R group here, no? Any R group, then dito pod, any R group. Any alkyl ba? Any alkyl group. That could be a methyl, ethyl, isopropyl, tert-butyl, whatsoever. Ang inyuha lang is, you know, the functional group kapag ether. ROR. Okay? So, yung part na yan is ether. So, halimbawa, dito, specific example lang to. So, yung R group sa magkabilang sides, CH3, ganun din sa right side, CH3. Okay? Sige nga, let me check if you have somehow, no, understand or somehow may naintindihan with regards to identification of functional group. O kapag ang structure, ako siyang i-next ha, kapag ang structure contains an OH, what is that functional group? Okay, very good. Kapag naman carbon to carbon double bond, carbon to carbon, alkene, very good. Paano naman kapag ROR? ROR.
Ether.
Okay, ether, very good. Paano naman kapag chain of alkane with a halogen?
Halide or halide.
Okay, very good. So, ano lang siya? Okay? Sige, let us proceed to amine. Now, with regards to amine naman, ito yung tandaan nyo. Okay, ayaw mo ka-overwhelm sa inyong nakita dira sa inyong handouts na daghan kayo R group, etc. Ito lang tandaan kapag amine class, carbon single bond to nitrogen. Kapag nakakita kayo ng carbon single bond to nitrogen, then that is amine. Okay? So, this could be here, an R group, okay, R group, or depende yan sa klase ng amine. Meron kasi tayong actually apat na klase ng amine. But the most stable form of amines would be primary, secondary, and tertiary amine. So, ganito yun. Kapag ang amine is primary amine, you'll observe na ang nitrogen only contains, it is only directly bonded to one carbon. So, the rest, hydrogen. Parang yung concept sa, yung na-discuss ko na sec-butyl, tert-butyl, naalala yun yung nature ng carbon. Kapag ang branching carbon, may two other carbons attached to it, then that's a secondary carbon. So parang ganito yung concept dito. This time lang, ang central atom is a nitrogen. Kung ang central atom na nitrogen ng amine, merong isang carbon directly attached to it. So primary yan. Primary amine. Kapag naman ang central atom, nitrogen ng amine, has two carbons attached to it, then meron pa siyang isang directly attached na hydrogen, then that is secondary amine. Now, kapag naman puro na R group, puro carbon na, yung surrounding ng nitrogen sa isang amine, then that is already tertiary amine. Okay? That is why yung general formula dito, as you can see, it could be, ayan, isang R group, so that is primary amine. Ito yon. Ito naman, yung nitrogen, merong R2. R2 meaning dalawang alkyl group directly attached to it. And I repeat ha, yung R group that is represented by a carbon portion ng alkyl group. Okay, so secondary yan, secondary. Ito yon. Then tertiary, ito na yun. R3. Nitrogen is being surrounded by 3 R groups. Okay, I hope nakuha yan ha. It has something to do with the nature of the nitrogen ng amine dito. Okay, so yung point lang dito kapag amine class, carbon single bond to nitrogen. Diba? So lahat to, carbon single bond to nitrogen, yung makikita natin. Okay, that's amine. Okay, so simplest example, you have there methylamine. Okay, now by looking at the example, nitrogen has still two directly attached na hydrogen atoms. What type of amine is this? Primary, secondary, tertiary?
Primary.
Okay, primary. Very good. Okay, so ano lang ha? Sige, let us proceed to imine. Now, with regards to imine, ito naman yung tandaan nyo. Imine, carbon double bond, nitrogen. Okay? Kapag carbon, double bond nitrogen, imine yan. So, as being boxed with color red. So, that is how you identify imine. Okay? Next, kapag naman nitrile, carbon, triple bond to nitrogen. Okay? So, when you memorize amine until nitrile, you try to compare that whenever you memorize alkane to alkyne. Kasi almost same sila, nagkakaiba lang sila sa atom being bonded. But when it comes to the number of bonds, diba, na sila yung moral similarities. No, kung imo i-compare si amine o si alkane, carbon to carbon single bond. Kapag amine, carbon to nitrogen single bond. Kapag nitrile versus alkyne, triple bond yung both. Sa nitrile lang, carbon to nitrogen, triple bond. Si alkyne, carbon to carbon, triple bond. So, ganun. Okay? Sige. Let's have thiol. With regards to thiol, class, kapag naka-encounter kayo ng term thio, particularly ito, thio, that represents the atom sulfur. So, kumbaga, ang mismong compound or group of atom, merong presence ng sulfur. Thio is equivalent to sulfur. Ngayon, it ends in ol. Diba? The thiol, it ends in ol. So, you can compare this with the functional group of alcohol. Only that, kung ang alcohol has the functional group OH, ang thiol simply replace this oxygen to sulfur. So, magiging SH. Ayan. Kaya nga, yung type formula niya, instead of ROH, which is sa alcohol yun, you replace oxygen to sulfur. So, it makes it RSH. No, RSH. That is how I think that would be effective, no? Kung mag-memorize mo ani nga table, you try to compare no, yung differences, you try to pinpoint the differences and similarities ng mga set of functional groups para madali mo lang ma-memorize, no, yung mga differences and also the similarities. Okay? So that's for thiol class. So, kung saan ang example dito, they specify na ang R group, okay? Ito example lang, no? Says example, ang R group na binigay is the methyl. Okay, making it methane thiol. Do not worry ha, the name. Again, okay, for the nth time, separate atong discussion for the naming. Sige, let's have sulfide. Ang sulfide naman, it is, yung structure niya is comparable to ether. Ano yung ether? Di ba yung ether is ROR? Ether is ROR. Now, yun lang, i-replace mo lang ng sulfur, yung central atom na oxygen sa ether, that makes it sulfide. No, kapag RSR, that is sulfide. Kuha? Ayan. Next, disulfide. So, from the prefix di, di, dalawa. Ibig sabihin, may presence ng dalawang sulfur. Okay, sa gitna ng R group. So, as you can see, here, you have a sulfur, two sulfur singly bonded to each other. So, that's disulfide. Okay, and then, you have here, and singly bonded to R groups. And yung R groups represented yan by the carbon atom ng alkyl group. Okay? So, halimbawa, sa specific example dito, yung R group is R methyls. No? Kaya dimethyl disulfide. Okay? Sige, next. Aldehyde. Now, with regards to aldehyde, starting from aldehyde, no? Then, succeeding tayo ng mga functional group mula aldehyde, these are already considered carbonyl containing compound. Okay, carbonyl containing functional group to be specific. I repeat, mula aldehyde, then towards the succeeding na mga functional group, mga carbonyl containing na yung functional group. Yung meron silang commonalities pa. Meron silang carbonyl present sa ilahang functional group. So yan yung carbonyl. So when you are asked to identify carbonyl, that is carbon double bond to oxygen. Okay, carbonyl, carbon double bond to oxygen. So as you can observe there in your PDF handouts, 'di ba? After disulfide, lahat na ng mga functional group, succeeding functional group, merong carbonyl. Carbon double bond oxygen. Okay? So let's have aldehyde. So with regards to aldehyde, yung makikita natin is itong carbonyl carbon, ito yung carbonyl carbon. The carbonyl carbon, it is directly bonded to a terminal hydrogen. Siyempre, in this case, hydrogen will always be terminal kapag aldehyde kasi you cannot add any more bonds sa hydrogen. One bond lang yung kayang, yan na yung stable number of bonds ng hydrogen. Kaya nga always siya terminal, di ba? Terminal na atom ang hydrogen when you write a Lewis structure. Okay? So that's the functional group of aldehyde. A carbonyl carbon is directly bonded to a terminal hydrogen. So itong portion na to, this could be any R group. Okay, kaya makikita natin dyan, RCHO. No, R, carbon, single bond to hydrogen. Then itong oxygen na to is doubly bonded to this carbon. Okay, to this carbon. It's not the other way around ha, when you write the type formula of aldehyde. Very wrong kung RCOH. Kasi there are students who try to write the type formula or condensed formula general formula ng aldehyde in this way. This is wrong because it only means, kung ingani inyuhang pagka-write sa aldehyde, it only means nga ang hydrogen is bonded directly to oxygen. Okay? So, para ma-emphasize lang na the hydrogen is directly bonded to carbon for an aldehyde, okay, that is being written in this way. CHO. Yes, Miss Christina. Do you have any question? Or basing natuplukan lang? Anyways, let us continue. So this is an example, no, of an aldehyde, specific example of an aldehyde. So as you can see, ang R group is this portion. Okay? Then you can see as being encircled with color green. Oh, ito na yung functional group. This is the aldehyde part. Nakuha? The CHO. No, itong CHO, this is the functional group as being labeled. Okay? Sige. Now, before we proceed to the next table, sige, ato gyapong i-recap. Okay, try to scan ha sa inyo ha, kaninga slide. Ato siyang mag-recall recall questioning ta. Okay, what if you have a structure and then you've observed a sulfur atom singly bonded to a carbon. A sulfur atom singly bonded to a carbon. One sulfur atom singly bonded to a carbon. Okay, very good. It's sulfide. Paano naman kapag carbon triple bond to nitrogen? Triple bond to nitrogen. Okay, very good. Paano naman kapag you have a carbonyl carbon with a terminal hydrogen?
Aldehyde.
Okay,
Aldehyde.
very good. Paano naman kapag dalawang sulfur singly bonded?
Disulfide.
Okay, very good. Sige, let's continue. Now, I have told you earlier na together with aldehyde, the succeeding functional groups that will be represented already contains carbonyl. So, sulat ko lang ulit. This is the carbonyl. Okay? So, you'll observe here from ketone until, ano yung last dyan? Anhydride, I think. Anhydride. Mga carbonyl containing. No? Aldehyde is also considered as one. Yung kanina, na include lang siya separately. Kaya di naman masigot dari nga slide. So, aldehyde until anhydride, merong this one, carbonyl portion. So, when you study this part, kapag carbonyl containing na yung functional group, yung titingnan nyo is yung terminal or yung directly attached to the carbonyl carbon. Ito, yung directly attached dito sa carbon being highlighted. Doon sila nagkakaiba. Okay, when it comes to their functional group. But the carbonyl portion is part of their functional group ha. Do not get me wrong. Ang carbonyl portion is part of their functional group. Ang akin lang is saan sila nagkakaiba. Okay, because that could be your kumbaga reference point to distinguish their differences. Okay, sige. So for ketone, take note, the carbonyl carbon is directly attached to another carbon. Kasi R group agad. So to another carbon. Diba? Kapag R group represented by a carbon portion ng alkyl group. Okay? So this is an example. So as you can see, diba, this is the carbonyl portion. Then kung titingnan mo, mga carbons yan. Carbon. Directly attached to this carbonyl carbon. So that is a ketone. Okay, that is a ketone. Itong portion na to is a ketone. Next, we also have carboxylic acid. So ang carboxylic acid naman, tingnan, ang carbonyl carbon, it is directly attached to an OH. So yan naman yung carboxylic acid. Carbonyl carbon, then mayroong terminal OH. So this is also considered terminal part But with ketone, you cannot say nga terminal always si ketone kasi yung sides niya are R groups, di ba? Mga carbon. So, pwede yan nasa internal yung ketone. But with regards to aldehyde, carboxylic acid, meron silang hydrogen on their ends. You cannot add any more group of atoms kapag may hydrogen on the end. Hydrogen is always a terminal atom. Okay? So you have an OH, terminal OH, attached to the carbonyl carbon that is carboxylic acid. Okay? So ito yung general formula ng any carboxylic acid. Okay? By the way, I wasn't able to introduce the type formula, no? Yung ketone, if we try to simplify, no, its general formula, it's R, ikuan lang ni mo i-simplify. You have an R group, then di ba you have a carbonyl. Carbonyl is carbon double bond to oxygen, and then ito yung part na to, the prime carbon. Okay? That is just to distinguish nga ito yung merong part na merong one group of alkyl group dito, then this is another alkyl group. Okay? Then for the carboxylic acid, if we try to write its simplified type formula, so you have an R group, ito yon. Then you have a carbon double bond to oxygen. Ito pa yon. Ito pa yung nasulat ko ha. R group, carbon double bond to oxygen, then may OH pa. So you write OH. So RC, OOH, that is the type formula of carboxylic acid. So that is a specific example. So itong portion na to is the acid portion or the carboxylic acid. Okay, then ito yung R group. A specific R group na this time. Kaya provide naman siya og R group, which is CH3CH2. Ayan. Next, ester. So this is another carbonyl containing functional group. So this time, as you can see, merong OR. Okay, bakit OR? This is an R group here. Okay? So, ang type formula naman niya is based sa iyahang general formula. It's R carbon double bond to O. So, ito yon, carbon double bond O, then OR. Okay? So, yan yung ester. When you try to differentiate that with the other carbonyl-containing compound, ito lang yung titingnan mo. No? The portion, okay, that is directly attached to the carbonyl carbon. Okay, so RCOOR, that's ester. Next, thioester. So thio ulit, thio, presence of sulfur. Okay? Now, ester. So, you simply refer to the structure ng ester or functional group ng ester. Only that, you replace this oxygen to sulfur atom. Okay? That makes it thioester. Okay? Thioester. So, ito yun. So, dito lang sila nagkakaiba. The oxygen portion of ester is replaced with sulfur. Okay? Making it thioester. Nakuha? So when you write the type formula of thioester, it's R, C double bond O, then okay, SR. Nakuha? Ito lang yun. Okay, R, C, O, SR. Okay, so this is a specific example. So ito yung functional group. Nakuha? Amide. Amide is different from amine. Kasi yung amine, wala siyang carbonyl present sa functional group. It's only solely carbon single bond nitrogen. Now, kapag nakakita ka ng carbon, single bond to nitrogen, but this carbon is a carbonyl carbon, that's the time amide yan. Nakuha? Itong mismong carbon, singly bond to nitrogen should be a carbonyl carbon that is an amide. Okay, nakuha? Tingnan, carbonyl carbon singly bonded to a nitrogen. Okay, so that would be the general formula. So basing on this example, we can write the type formula of amide in this manner. So you have RC, then the double bond O, and you continue lang. Nitrogen, then you have the R, then an H. Okay? So that's the simplified type formula of amide. And then, okay, malapit na. Acyl chloride. Acyl chloride naman, ganun din, it contains carbonyl and it is directly attached with a chlorine, no? A chloride. Kaya acyl chloride. Okay, the carbonyl carbon directly attached with chlorine. So yan. So this could be any R group. Halimbawa dito, ayan, represented by CH3. Ito yung functional group, the acyl chloride. Okay? And then lastly, the anhydride. The acid anhydride or the carboxylic acid anhydride. It is named carboxylic acid anhydride because this compound, class of compound, they are being produced by simply reacting two carboxylic acids. No? Two carboxylic acids being reacted, you will produce acid anhydride. That is why, as you can see on the functional group, it looks like a two carboxylic acid, no, being combined. Okay, based sa iyang structure lang. No, you have a carbon, di ba? A double bond to O na instead of hydrogen, di ba, supposedly hydrogen agad, isang carboxylic acid yan. So, ang hydrogen is being replaced with another carbonyl portion. No? Ayan. So, that is anhydride. Okay? So, that is being produced from two carboxylic acid being reacted. Okay? Sige. So, with regards to the identification ng functional group, you don't have a choice but you really have to master, no, the structural features ng mga class of compounds. Paano natin masasabi na amide yan? So, yan, may carbonyl carbon singly bonded to nitrogen. So, you really have to be familiar, no, with the different common na mga functional group. And these are all common, no? Pila ni kabuo, pero they are the common, no? Common na mga functional group. There are still other na mga functional group. Pero we will not encounter them here sa basic study sa organic chem, but you will learn that later on kapag nag-medicinal chemistry kayo. So, dun muna tayo sa basic one. Okay? Sige. So, yun yung technique ha, kapag you have seen a structure, sobrang laki yung structure, and then you have checked na, uy, merong carbonyl. Ito, meron kayong nakitang carbonyl portion. Try to examine dayon yung directly attached dito sa mismong carbonyl carbon. That's the time you can identify what particular carbonyl containing functional group is that. Okay? So, yun. Sige, let's have a sample problem. Okay? So, in this sample problem, this is actually the structure, chemical structure of amoxicillin. And you know this medicine, no? You're all familiar with amoxicillin. So, ito po yung chemical structure ng amoxicillin. So, in our case, here sa atong topic, for it to relate, no, with our discussion, using the structure of amoxicillin, you try to identify the functional group present here. So I will be highlighting, no, the portions of the structure ng amoxicillin. Then your task is to simply, you can type in or you can open your audio, turn on your audio to answer, no, what functional group being encircled. Okay? Sige, let's start with this portion of amoxicillin, OH. What do you think is this functional group?
Alcohol.
Okay, very good. So, sulat ko ha. This is alcohol. Diba? This is an R group, no? A carbon. For any skeletal structure, per corner is a carbon. Alright? So, what about this portion?
Arin.
Okay, very good. This is Arin. Okay, very good. What about this portion here? Carbon, single bond to nitrogen. Carbon, single bond nitrogen. It
Amine.
is, okay, it's amine. Okay, very good. It's amine. Carbon, single bond to nitrogen. What about this one? You have a carbonyl already. A carbonyl, then the carbonyl carbon is singly bonded to nitrogen. Go. Then you try to look at those sets of what? Uh, amide, ending in di. Very
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
Amide or amide, that's correct. Okay. Now, what about this one? It's still,
Amine.
okay, very good. Parehas lang, no? Amide or amide. No, parehas lang yan. Carbonyl, basta mo rin yung technique class. Kapag sa isang malaking structure, nakakita kayo ng carbon, double bond to oxygen, you refer dayon directly to those functional groups na carbonyl containing. No? Pila raman to? Mga 8 ba yun? Mga nga na. 8 ba sila? Hindi ko alam. 7. Carbonyl containing carbon. Then tingnan mo yung directly attached sa mismong carbonyl carbon for you to distinguish what is that carbonyl containing functional group. So in this case, this is amide kasi the carbonyl carbon is singly bonded to a nitrogen. Amide yun. Okay? What about this portion?
Sulfide.
Okay, very good. This is sulfide. What about the last one?
Carboxylic acid.
Very good. Carboxylic acid. So, ana lang. Okay? Carboxylic acid is also a carbonyl containing functional group. Sige. Let's have another example. Let me transfer to another PowerPoint. So, you expect na sa quizzes or exam, parang ganito yung mangyayari, no? I will be highlighting a portion of a structure, then you will identify the functional group. Ayan. Sige. Okay. So, I will be the one who will be labeling the functional group. Ang sa inyo lang na part is to distinguish the functional group. Okay? So, let's start with this one. Let me have color red na lang. What about this portion? Triple bond. Carbon to carbon. Of course, that's obviously carbon kasi walang pinakitahan na
Alkyne.
atom. Okay, very good. That is alkyne. Okay, pag ingana gani sa skeletal formula, yung corner good nga walang pinakita ng mga atoms, that's automatically carbon. Okay, per corner ng any skeletal formula, that's a carbon. What about this portion?
Halide.
Okay, very good. This is halide. Okay, kasi merong halogen directly or singly bonded to a carbon. Okay? Singly bonded to a carbon, so that's halide or haloalkane. What about this portion?
Alkyne.
Very good. This is alkene. Kasi carbon, double bond to a carbon. Okay, very good. What about, dito tayo. What about that portion? It is,
Arin.
okay, Arin. Okay, that is Arin, the class of compound or the name of functional group. Paano naman kapag ito yung being encircled?
Carboxylic.
Very good. Carboxylic acid. Okay, so that's your reference point gid ha kapag mayroong carbonyl portion dito dayon mo sa list of carbonyl containing functional groups. So may directly attachment to OH, that is carboxylic acid. Oh, what about this one? Oh, sorry. This portion here. So as you can see, these are carbon, carbon. So what is that?
Ester.
Ketone.
Sure, very good. That
Ketone.
is ketone. Okay? Ketone kasi carbon. Then carbon. You have a carbonyl. So this carbonyl carbon, single bond siya to another carbon. Then you have another carbon. Okay, so what about this portion? Ayan.
Carboxylic acid.
Sure. OH lang.
Alcohol.
Okay, very good. That is alcohol. Okay, you have to be careful good when you identify. If carboxylic acid, dapat itong carbon na to is a carbonyl carbon. But it is only a singly bonded nga carbon, so it is alcohol. Okay? Sige, what about this portion? Sige. Functional
Ester.
group.
Ester.
Very good. This is ester. So, merong carbonyl. Now, tingnan niyo yung gilid, no? Kung saan yung direct attachment ng carbonyl carbon. So, merong OR. This is an R group, a CH3. No? Kasi ano man siya? Corner. So, that is a CH3 alkyl group. So, OR yan, ester. Oh, what about this portion?
Amine.
Okay. Amine. Very good. What about this one? Sige. Carbon ito. Carbon. Sige nga. Very good. It is ether. Okay? Ether. COCROR. No? ROR. What about this portion here? Ayan.
Amide.
Sige nga. Amide. Okay, very good. Amide. Amide. You have a carbon, carbonyl carbon, and singly bond to nitrogen. Oh, what about this portion here?
Aldehyde.
Very good. This is an aldehyde. No? So if you memorize good the structural feature, meron kasi sila, di ba, mga distinct na functional features, structural features, you can identify, no, the specific functional group being highlighted in a structure. Okay? Paano naman, itong part na to. Sige yan. Sige nga.
Amide.
Okay, very good. This is still amide, no? Amide. Kasi merong carbonyl carbon directly attached to singly bonded to a nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
Okay, very good. So ito paulit-ulit lang din. This is still amide, no? Parehas lang 'yan, amide. What about this one? Kana. Yung being encircled lang, ha? Sige nga.
Amine.
Very good. This is only amine. Tingnan, ha, yung direct attachment. Nitrogen, single bond to a carbon. Hindi naman to carbonyl carbon, di ba? Itong hinighlight ko na carbon. Sige, itong kulay blue. This is not a carbonyl carbon. Walang carbonyl dyan. Okay? Ito yung carbonyl carbon. Itong kulay black. No? Carbonyl carbon yan. That's why amide ito. But this one is an amine. No? Yung nasa baba. Okay? I think wala na. No? Nahurot na nato og identify. Okay? Sige. So, any question about identification of functional groups?
None.
Wala? Okay,
None,
none so
ma'am.
far. Okay, very good. If you really memorize, ana lang yun, you can answer the identification of functional group. Let's go back no, to the slide. Sige. Now, at this juncture, let me introduce how to name branch alkyl groups. Okay. Sige. Okay, officially we will now begin our discussion on the nomenclature ng mga organic molecules. Kasi you know already no, how to identify functional groups. So this time, we will name already. Now we will be naming organic compounds, starting with branched alkanes. Now with regards to the nomenclature ng mga organic compounds, just like sa inorganic compounds, we will be using the set of rules that were provided by the IUPAC. No? Yung IUPAC system na naming sa mga organic molecules, yun din yung gagamitin natin. Okay, so naga po yung set of rules, we just have to follow it. Okay, so for any organic molecules name, ito yung kumbaga component. No? Ito yung makikita natin. Kumbaga, ito yung magiging ingredient ba ng isang organic molecules name. So it has a locant. Locant that refers or it gives the position of the branches or the substituents, or the locant could also indicate the position of the functional groups. Whereas yung prefixes naman, the prefix portion that identifies the various substituents in a molecule. Okay, so later you will get to appreciate these portion ng organic name kapag nakapag-name na tayo ng specific molecule. No? And then the parent name, ito yung pinaka isa sa main part, no? Ito yung pinaka main part ng molecule, which actually tells us the total number of carbon atoms in the longest carbon chain ng mismong organic compound. Okay? And then the suffix, yun na nga, I have mentioned, diba, last previous na to nga discussion, the suffix of, or the ending portion of the name ng organic molecule helps us indicate or identify the functional group present in that molecule. So if it's ending in ane, that is an alkane. Ending in ol, alcohol. Ending in al, it is an aldehyde. Ending in on, it is a ketone. So parang ganun. The suffixes will help us identify the functional group present in that molecule. Okay, so we will begin the nomenclature of branch chain alkanes. Kasi natapos na, madali lang kasi yung sa straight chain alkane. You simply count, straight lang naman, walang mga sanga-sanga. Simply count the carbon chain, and then you use the Greek prefix except for the first four compounds ng straight chain alkane, and then we simply add the suffix ane. So yun yung straight chain alkane. But kapag may mga sanga na, you really have to identify those branches, no? Or what we call substituents. Okay? Kasi meron ng presence ng substituents. Substituents yung tawag natin yung sa mga sanga-sanga. Okay? Sanga-sanga. Sige, so for the first step in naming branched chain alkene, unang-una na dapat yung gawin is to find the parent. No? You find the parent hydrocarbon. Okay, so how to find the parent carbon? Take note, the parent carbon is the longest continuous chain of carbon. So for an alkane, by the way, how we are talking here, the nomenclature of alkane, no, the branched chain alkane. So dapat yung nasa isip niyo lang, yung makikita natin sa structure is chain of carbon single bonds. Nakuha? Carbon single bond to carbon lang. Okay, walang ibang atoms. Okay? However, later on, I will be adding, no, para may spice din, I will be adding substituents like halogen later on, but it's very simple naman to identify halogen. No, fluorine lang naman yan, chlorine, bromine. Okay? So, again, The parent chain, no, the parent chain of a branched chain alkane is the longest. The continuous chain carbon, please do not neglect this highlighted or underlined uh, na information. Kasi ang parent dapat siya yung continuous. Hindi putol-putol. Dapat magsisimula ka sa terminal carbon when you look for the parent. You don't start with the internal carbon when you count or when you look for the parent. Okay, parent hydrocarbon. You really have to start with the terminal carbons. So, pili kayo, asa mo magsugod, right side ba or left side na terminal carbon. It's up to you as long as that is the longest continuous chain of carbon. Okay? Then, if you already find the longest continuous chain of carbon, use the name of that chain as the parent name. Okay? So, step by step when we locate for the parent. So, halimbawa, okay, in this given example, okay, so letter A, you have there how many carbons for a longest continuous chain. So, these are terminal carbon, no? Ito, pwede to terminal carbon. Ito din, terminal carbon, terminal carbon. So, it's up to you where will you begin, no? Looking for the continuous chain of carbon. So, this part, that is one, no? One potential na continuous chain and the longest chain, no? Another, let me delete it ha. Kasi 6 yon, di ba? 6 ba yon? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 yan. So longest carbon chain. When you start here sa taas, then going to the right, that is still a 6 carbon chain. Tama? That could still be a parent hydrocarbon. It's equivalent, 6 carbon chain, and it's a continuous chain. So that is how you look for the parent. Nakuha? The longest. Okay? Mula terminal to terminal carbons or portion ng molecule. Sige, another example, letter B. Where is the parent chain? Ilan? Ganito na lang para mas mabilis. Ilan yung later na, Mr. Sabio. Meron tayong condition dyan. What if dalawa parehas yung number of carbon? Okay, pero wala nang time. But madadiscuss natin yan. Okay, letter B yan ata sa finding the parent. So, dito muna sa letter B, ilan yung carbon sa longest chain? Letter B na molecule ha. You simply count. Ilan yung carbon containing in the longest chain for this molecule?
6.
Okay, very good. 6. So, if I'm not mistaken, ito yung sinasabi niyong 6 carbon. Okay? So, that is right. Wala na highlight. Wait sa galag. Naglag siya. Okay, ayun. So, naglag. Ayan. So, yan yung 6 carbon chain. And tama. Wala nang iba, no? Wala nang ibang longest chain. What about letter C? The longest chain dito is yung straight one. Sorry. Ang akong pagka-highlight, dili straight. Okay. Sige, balik. Ayan. So, yung longest chain is that one. Wala na ilain. No? When you try to look for the longest chain, longest continuous chain, yan na yun. And letter D, the longest chain naman dito, you tell me. Sana all walay lain. Yeah.
5
Exactly. Are you sure it's 5?
6.
Any other action?
6
An answer. Okay, very good. It's 6. It's here. Yan yung sabi ko na when you try to look for the longest continuous chain, take note, ang longest chain may not always be obvious, no? From the manner how it is written sa mismong structure. That's why you really have to do a trial and error, no? You really have to look for it. Kaya minsan sa isang structure, hindi obvious yung longest chain. Pa-zigzag-zigzag yan. As long as pasok dito, continuous siya. Continuous sa hindi putol-putol. Straight. Imo gid siyang maka-right gid kag straight nga linya. Ma-highlight nimo ba? Okay, ito yung longest one na chain. Okay, kasi kapag itong kulay black, no? 5 lang yan. 5 carbon chain. But the one highlighted with color purple, it's 6 carbon chain, and that is the longest one. But it's already time, no? So dito lang sa tamag mag-stop. I will continue the discussion next meeting. You can have an advanced reading sa inyong PDF handouts. Madali lang man maintindihan yung such alkane na naming. Okay? So that's why naka-indicate dito, no? Mga substituted hexane, itong A, tsaka B and D. Kasi 6 carbon containing yung chain nila. Whereas for letter C, na molecule, it's octane, substituted octane. It's not yet the name, it's not yet octane alone yung name kasi merong substituent and hindi pa natin na-identify yung substituent. So yan yung way ko ng pag-discuss sa naming. Step by step tayo. You start with the parent.